Welcome to Black Chick Watching. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. This is something that I love very much and I'm very passionate about. I am Amber P. Knight, hence, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. Are you guys from Dorchester? Are you local?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Adjacent. You're local-ish, friend of the family.
Right next door.
Exactly. Sounds good. So what is Black Chick Watching and why are you here? I'll tell you why I am here. I started Black Chick Watching because of conversations that I kept having with friends, no less. They would suggest shows, because I love TV and movies, and they would suggest things to me and say, you will love them. They would tell me shows that were amazing shows. I will give them that. But they wouldn't represent Black women or not well. So they would represent, so Game of Thrones, Downton Abbey, they're great shows. I absolve them, I understand. But they wouldn't represent Black women well. I would call it asbestos at a spa. It feels good to be there, but eventually it builds up in your system until you get sick. So I was sick of that happening. So I made a system, a very granular system, to break down why it is I do and do not like certain TV shows and certain movies, because it became too much that people wouldn't understand. So I broke it down and made the Amber P's Black Chick Watching rating system. So I'm going to break it down as such. So this is going to be, we're going to do some time traveling. So we're going to take it back to Mammy. This is Mammy from Gone with the Wind. Hattie McDaniel's first Black woman to ever win an Oscar. She did her role with dignity. She was an actress doing a job, and she did amazing. I want us to start with this juxtaposition between this white woman and this Black woman. Remember it, we will come back to it. I want to talk about a concept I call cast to be frumpy. You probably think I am insulting this actress. I am not, because this is a woman, a Black woman, in prison. This is a white woman stranded for 2 weeks in the jungle, covered in mud, yet she looks like she came out of a modeling agency. Cast to be frumpy. Yet, this is what she looks like in real life. And this. Again, cast to be frumpy.
Shut the door. You mind?
All right, sure.
Come in.
Again, cast to be frumpy. Thank you.
No problem.
Get cozy. We're all friends here. So in real life, she's amazing, she's beautiful, she's great. But what would happen is, so here's what would happen. People just wouldn't let it go. They wouldn't let me just have that. I said, I don't like this juxtaposition. It bothers me, but people don't like seeing a moral mirror. They would see it as me judging them, that they like a show. That show that I was showing you, The Women in Prison, was called Orange is the New Black. And again, it's women in prison, so people would say, because they like the show, well, they're in prison. What do you expect? Because they don't want to let it go. Well, Hispanic woman in prison, Hispanic woman in prison, white woman in prison, Hispanic woman in prison. Where have we seen this juxtaposition of white women next to Black women? Again, those Black women are beautiful, but look at what Hollywood did to them. Now, somebody tricked me. They were trying to be nice. They said, give the show Mad Men a chance. It's about the 1950s and about these guys who were into advertising. 5 seasons, no Black people. Then they added Dawn with her bad wig and her storyline. She's talking about how she can't get a man, and that's her thing. And what are the, she's a secretary, and that's what role she would have played if she existed in real life. This is what the other secretaries look like. This is what she looks like in real life. So you get the point. This is the issue that I kept running against aesthetically. here are some cliches that I've seen and you've probably seen with Black women on TV. Violent, criminal, savage, poor, sassy, / ghetto. And there was a show that I was not going to give a chance to just from the commercials. The show is Empire. Cookie. Cookie encapsulated all of those stereotypes just from what I heard from the reviews, even from people who liked it. I was not going to give that show a chance. Until I did. Wait for Cookie. But she is everything that I didn't want to see wrapped up into one person. I was said, see, there's Hollywood doing Hollywood. The name is Cookie, ask about me. No, thank you. So Serena Williams. Serena Williams, she makes her own rules. She is not what Hollywood has made her, exuding sexuality, and people will judge her. Why does she have to go around flaunting being sexy? Well, this is portrayals that people do about her. This is her homegirl, what her homegirl does to her. I think it's funny that she stuffed her chest like that. That's how Serena stuffs her chest. Yeah, girl. Okay, get those awards. So, one of the things that would happen, again, is the juxtaposition. Juxtaposition about what would happen between how white women are represented and how Black women are represented. So there are some shows that didn't have any Black women in them, but the way that they were put together didn't necessarily mean that I didn't like the show. But we'll break down how they treat the white women and how it affects how I watch the show. So constantly being saved and protected. One of the criticisms I hear from a lot of women is, I'm sick of women being saved and protected on TV. And I would tell them, being saved and protected is a problem that a lot of Black women have to graduate to being, because they've never been seen as worthy enough to be protected. This is Felicity Smoke. She's on a comic book show called Arrow. And comic book shows are notorious for having a pretty girl that's kind of around, and she's a very important part of their team and doesn't have a superpower, so they're constantly saving and protecting her. Does she have the role because she's white? And I don't mean, well, she happened to roll into the audition and she was the best person. This happens a lot with period pieces. This is Downton Abbey. Amazing show. I gave it a season. It was a wonderful show. I couldn't go back. If you're in a period piece, the thing that I get a lot is, well, what are you going to do? It was set in a certain timepiece. I don't think so. During that time period, on this estate around in England, right before the First World War, there could have been Black people upstairs and downstairs in this estate, so please don't give me that. But even so, this is a case of, one of the things that people would feed me is, well, what are you going to do? And it's like, tell other people's stories is what you're going to do. And we'll get to that when we get to telling your stories. Love interest and sex symbols, and this is constantly hearing about certain people's love interests and being sex symbols. The difference between being a sex symbol and being a sex object is choice. People who choose to be sex symbol and sex object, you don't choose. Okay, so has anybody ever heard of the show Doctor Who? Yeah. Ah, nice. The rest of you, what?
I've never watched it.
You've heard of it, but never watched it?
It's very famous.
The rest of you, I'll allow you to stay this time, but Doctor Who is this show. It's been around since the 60s, 1963, November 23rd. But anyhow, not that I'm a nerd about it or anything, but it's been around forever, and it's this guy, he travels in time and he has companions.
It's British, right?
Absolutely. And it's been around for over 50 years, and he has companions, and they used to all be white, and then it came back after a gap of decades. And when it came back, it had an interracial couple, then it had a Black woman, then it had a white woman with red hair in her 40s. It had a guy, they called him a 51st century kind of guy. He was bisexual, but he was also from outer space, so he liked aliens too. And it wasn't a big deal. People just showed up and were who they were, and it was very diverse. Then it changed show producers. And we have Amy Pond, who is a wonderful, amazing character. I like to call her something for the dads, because it's a kind of a family show. And there was an episode where the titular doctor called three of his companions the Legs, the Nose, and Mrs. Robinson for obvious aesthetic reasons. I call them the stripper, and the senior citizen. I'm not being mean when I call her the stripper. First of all, here, women doing their job. But at the beginning of her storyline, the producer, had her as a kissogram. So that is the transition that show made. And I used to love the show because it was for everybody and there was someone for everyone. And especially because it was British and there's so much more diversity in Britain. Then it got all Hollywood on us. So I'm gonna skip a couple of these. And the interracial one. Okay, so why is the interracial one on here before you go beating me up? Have I been in your way this whole time?
No.
Okay. Black woman and black man pining after white woman. So calm down, everyone. I've been in interracial relationships. This is not an indictment on interracial relationships. Here's the thing. Most black women's entry into a Hollywood scenario, a TV show or whatever, is as a sister, aunt, what have you. And what happens is, it's changed a lot in the last 5-7 years. Historically, go ahead and check me. An interracial relationship has been a white man with an Asian woman or a white woman with anybody, because white women have been considered universally beautiful. So there's all these opportunities that black women have been left out of. And again, same show, Orange is the New Black. And this is a quote from Kanye West. Kanye, back in the day, he has a song about a song called Gold Digger, and he has one line about telling a girl, don't worry, if you stick around with a man and people say that you're a gold digger, when he gets on, he'll leave your butt for a white girl. And this is him with his homegirls back in the day, and he has moved on, and his artistry has now not reflected his community anymore. And this just runs down how Orange is the New Black isn't great anymore. Now, fun stuff. So the rest of this is the fun stuff. So this is still in the white woman section. One of the things that happens with white women is that they don't get to be human. So a lot of the stuff that I showed you that is annoying for me is also what dehumanizes them, like having to be a stripper, having to be a kissogram, and being something for the dads when the other characters got to be fleshed out. So when white women get to be human and don't have to just be props, it does humanize the show for me. And an example of that was the Ghostbusters remake, because I went into that movie going, I'm not gonna feel solidarity. I only went for Leslie Jones, the black chick. I was like, whatever. I left that theater going, I'm a Ghostbuster too! And I was so excited, and I told somebody about it, and it was a guy, and he was like, yeah, it sounds like you only like it because you're a chick. I'm not gonna go. It's like, this is why I have a podcast, and this is why I do these presentations. Heartbreaking. Another thing is when they get to have humanity. Hello. That's not something, like I said, being able to be humanized. This character, one of the things that happened a lot on that, and they did represent Black women or Black people at all, but they did with women show women's plight a lot. And this woman, she was a sex symbol and a sex object, and I appreciate that they showed her as a person. She wasn't just, like they showed her facade and then you see her at home and they see what she had to go through.
Tell me how they showed her as a person.
Well, well, you would see her, have you seen the show?
I've watched it off.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, you see her prancing around, so all of that you see, but like her married life, how her husband would treat her. This is a scene, one of the things that would happen, it's an advertising agency, and they would entertain their clients, taking them to gentlemen's clubs and stuff. And one of them said, I want to hang out with your redhead. And he's like, we can get you any redhead. He's like, I want to hang out with your redhead. They essentially sold her. And that's kind of what happened. And like when Marilyn Monroe died, they were like, oh, that Monroe and stuff like that. And she realized, like, wait a minute, that's me. And how they're talking about her. And she was seeing how, and she got pregnant and by this guy, and she was assaulted. And like there's an arc that they show to her, and she's not just a pretty face. And I appreciate that she got to have that.
This character, Joan,
Mhm.
when she was sold, though, she was a partner in the
She got,
and she did it to keep the firm stable and successful, and also like what's going on today in the news, okay? Totally, career at stake, and the firm she was a partner in. And one of the things that happens to her in the series is at one point in one season, she's writing scripts. She has a creative force. She's writing scripts for one of her male higher-ups. She's doing the creative work, writing the scripts, coming up with all these ideas. He steals her work and she doesn't get any credit. So her intellectual property is
if
taken away.
only.
It's a lot of stuff going on with Joan's
Exactly.
character.
Where have I seen stuff like that before?
Yeah.
Black Chicks too.
It's all over the place.
So now the fun stuff, Black Chicks. So now the titular Black Chick watching. So now for the awesome stuff. These are the things that I love to see, and I've been seeing more and more of them. So now for the Black Chick watching. So leading ladies. So this is Issa Rae. She has a show called Insecure. She started out with a web series called Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. Thank you. I'm ashamed that I forgot momentarily. Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. And she it blew up, and now she has an HBO show, and she stars in it, and, wrong side. I'm just playing, you know how I joke around. And that means a lot. Another thing that makes the show awesome for me is when there are supporting characters that are also Black chicks, as opposed to just a token. Other things that I love are colorblind casting. This is from a show called Merlin. A great story for Merlin. So it's about King Arthur's court. Black Queen Guinevere. I am here for that all day, every day. So I was talking to somebody about the show and how much I loved it, and he said, I love the show, it's great, but it's hard for me to believe that there's a Black Queen Guinevere. There's a talking dragon on the show. This is one of these talks, and this is why I have a podcast. And there's a show called Once Upon a Time that's on, and yeah, it's a fun show. It fails miserably, but I still watch it because it's escapism, and it's modern day fairy tales. There have been 2 Black chicks, and it's modern day. There's no excuse, and so colorblind casting for it is basically when there's no regard to traditional. So either gender or race or what have you, it doesn't matter. Hence, a non-traditional casting of her. Speaking of which, not necessarily colorblind, but The Wiz, which is a Black reimagining of, It's a black musical. We'll start with that. It's a black musical, and somebody found out about it. Somebody who wasn't very cultured, obviously. And they said, why, how about if there was a white version of it? Wouldn't people be upset? Son.
That's
It
the
is
one that I know.
exactly. Well, just so you know, The Wiz is also a very fun version of it with tons of color. And it came to NBC, and Twitter, Black Twitter, lost its mind, and it was one of the best things I've ever seen. Love interests and sex symbol. Again, sex symbol is a choice. This is from the show Queen Sugar. In the interest of full disclosure, I couldn't keep watching the show Queen Sugar. It is very good, but it's so deep, it's so heavy, I couldn't keep going. But it's beautiful, it's got rich storylines, and people just eat it up. It's on Oprah's network, OWN, and this woman has this younger man, and she gets to be beautiful, and she gets to not has to be frumpy, and she's not in her 20s and still gets to go out there and be beautiful and living her best life. I love it. I'm here for it all day, every day. Okay, so vulnerable. Where have we seen her before? This is Cookie again. So remember, hello, I'm Amberly Knight. That's me. Feel free to tweet. This is Cookie, and before I talked about how much I didn't like Empire, didn't give it a chance, and then I did, and I was furious. I was like, I don't want to do this, but I did. First scene of Empire is not there. The first scene of the movie Empire is this black woman, dark skin, short cropped hair. She is in a booth about to sing, and she sings beautiful voice. And when she's in there, Terrence Howard, that's his name, Terrence Howard. Yeah, his character is like, do it again. And she does it again, and he's like, no, do it more soulful, put more into it. And she does it again, and she doesn't do it enough for him. And he comes up to her and he said, do it again, but this time, remember when they killed your brother? And she does it again, and she belts it, and she starts crying, and I start crying, and I was like, I'm in! And it was like, okay, so maybe there's more to this show than I gave it credit for. And when it comes to vulnerability, there's this concept of the strong black woman, and it's like, I need a break sometimes. And when there's this, black women don't get to be vulnerable and open and sweet and have a day off and not have to save the world. And so when if it's oh, this is key. This is from How to Get Away with Murder, and this is the scene from Empire. So now for friends of the family. So I do love it when there's all kinds of diversity. Hate that word now. This is Rosario Dawson from a comic book show called Daredevil. There are 4 comic book shows, there's a lot of them, on Netflix that she is on. She is a connector on all 4. She's a crossover on all 4, and I love it, and it's great. This is white-ish friends of the family. So America Ferrara, who's in the middle, Hispanic but white. And I put this because there's other non-black chick diversity in this show. It's a fun little show, and since everybody is a basket case, I'm cool with there not being any black chicks, but it's a fun show, give it a shot. Another thing that I love is black families. This, I mean, before, it was just cool to see black people and black chicks mainly, and black people in general, and brown people, and just cool stuff on TV and in movies. And then it wasn't just enough for that, and the concept of black couples and black families more and more became something that was moving for me. And so when it came to this, and when it came to the show Arrow, not Arrow, there's a show called The Flash, and it's a comic book show. There's a trend in my life. There's a comic book show called The Flash, and there's a character named Iris. Traditionally, she's been drawn as a white girl, and now she's a black woman. She's a bit older now. I say older, she's in like her late 20s. And she's a black chick, and she has a black dad, and she has a black mom, and she has a black brother. And there's something about that struck me that I didn't realize made the show richer for me, that it wasn't just that there was a black chick, but that there was a black family. And like I said before, this time it was that there was a black chick who brought all of this blackness, as opposed to there had to be a black guy in the movie, and that's how a aunt or a sister or a cousin gets into the storyline, or a best friend gets into the storyline. So, last thing, and then it's your turn. This is by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it kind of sums up something that I think is awesome. No one wants to be, when asking about how she feels about the Supreme Court makeup, no one wants to be a one-at-a-time curiosity. And that's what I was. I was the only one. It wasn't the way the court should be at this time in our history. Following up, Ginsburg said that she is often asked how many women on the Supreme Court would be, quote, enough. Her answer, when there are 9. For most, and so that is not the biggest part of this statement for me, this part is. For most of the country's history, there were 9, and they were all men. No one thought that was strange, she explained. That is the point of my black chick watching. And this next part, which I call blank blank watching, where it's your turn, is that to notice things. I started to notice things and why things were a bummer for me. The asbestos at a spa. For the people who came in later, it's when I would watch TV, even if it was really good, great writing, great directing, it was like going to a spa with asbestos. It feels good to be there, but it builds up in your system until you get sick. And that's what it's like. I have a quota on how many shows I can watch at one time. And so that's what it became for me. And so when people are like, hey, why is this such a big deal for you? And it's like, maybe that's a question for you to ask yourself. So now it's your turn. Blank blank watching. Let's fill in the blank with whatever it is you are. I don't want to turn this off, but we can turn this to this. Can we have the lights on now, or some more lights on, and have a talk?
I think it was after Orange is the New Black. And there's a woman, there's a white chick or the black chick. I would like to see that.
Yeah,
with you.
sure,
I would
okay.
like to read that.
Yeah, it was a recapping of the white chick watching, and the things that I don't like to see but constantly see in Hollywood. So one character on one show, which is Orange is the New Black, which I know means a lot to a lot of people because it actually has a lot of diversity. I get it, but I don't like it. This is Piper. And Piper, this is based on a real book, which is why she has the role, because she's white. Because who else could play her? Because she's white. So it's sort of like a period piece, like I was saying before. She's a love interest and a sex symbol. How many people are falling all over her? Everyone. What the warden, the guards, the inmates, people in and out of prison, everyone. What do people sacrifice for her love? People put themselves in danger. People are sacrificing money. It's legal things, illegal things, all sorts of stuff. constantly being saved and protected. And there's a Black woman who's pining after her. Her nickname for her is like Flower because her hair is so golden, just like the sun. And it's like, your hair is beautiful. So yeah, summed up in one woman. So now it's time for blank blank watching. Blank blank watching is, when I've done it with other people, these are three of my favorites. Fat chick watching, blind chick squinting, and mixed kid watching. So whatever it is you are, what are some things that would be on your list? What are some of the things that have come up for you when you see Hollywood? So who has something from you?
I don't watch a lot of TV, and when I do, I watch a lot of PBS, but I am totally hooked on, I love Violet Davis, and I'm totally hooked on. Tonight I'm gonna go home and watch it, because we mostly following How to Get Away with Murder.
Yes,
Because I find her character very complex.
absolutely. How to Get Away with Murder flies. How to Get Away with Murder passes with flying colors. And I remember when it was just a question mark on my presentation, and it was like, there's this new show coming out called How to Get Away with Murder. I hope it's good, because I wasn't sure because of the signs. I was like, are they gonna front her up? Is this gonna be The Help Goes to College? Like, I wasn't sure. Is it gonna be all these co-eds running around in bikinis? But it's a wonderful show, a complex, good representation of Black women. I really like it.
And Shonda Rhimes, and I don't watch any of the Shonda's other, but I knew Viola Davis from her early acting days at Trinity Rep in Providence, and I'm a big fan of her, and she's an executive producer. So I thought, I gotta check this out, and I just totally got hooked and have been following it from the very beginning.
Okay, good job. I love it.
I think the thing for me, are you read through, man? Read through?
Yes.
I think the thing for me are some of the reality shows, particularly some of the shows that are based in the urban settings, like the Love and Hip Hop and all that kind of stuff. And my thing is the colorism. How they see light-skinned Black women, as they're objectified basically, and dark-skinned Black women are basically held in the lower tier, so to speak. And I'm telling you from personal experience, my two sons, they're dating now, and they're talking about women they're dating. Explain to me, this thing about you like a light-skinned Black woman as opposed to dark-skinned Black women. They look at me and say, have you spoken to them? No. I'm like, okay, where are you getting all this from? Where are you getting all this from? Who's teaching you this stuff? I'm not teaching you this. Your mother's not teaching you this. Where are you getting all this from? So this is the thing for me, it's this thing about colorism where you can actually, it's so palpable for me as an educator. When these young boys come to me, she's fine, she's this, she's that. I'm like, well, they're the same people. You talk about a shade darker or a shade lighter, what's the difference? But for me, I think as a person of color, as a man, that's a problem for me that I have with my sons and the younger generation. They really don't get it, what they're doing, how they're objectifying, and how basically they are demeaning all sisters of color. But so I with that, I see it on TV a lot. Most of the directors and scriptwriters will go towards a lighter skinned woman, and listen, she's passable, but she's lighter skinned and she's not as threatening, quote unquote, as a dark skinned woman.
Like Kerry Washington and Sam.
Well, and there are so many examples of what I'm talking about, and even in real life. Like I said, I'm dealing with this with my own two sons. Like, you're all crazy. Our family is so diverse in terms of that whole color thing. The hue of my family goes from deep dark black to like real light. So I don't get where they were coming from, and they never learned that from me or their grandparents or anybody, but they learned it somewhere, and it just boggles my mind. Like, they can't think deep beyond the color of someone's skin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is exactly what this is. And exactly. How old are they?
27 and 24. Got a master's degree, all that. Still,
In what?
Still crazy. Well, public health, I think, but he's gone. But he's in his own place now. But my point is, as I'm raising people, like, where do you learn this from? You never heard me say anything like that. I don't know, like I'm an idiot.
Well,
I don't know.
he's not under your roof 24 hours a day.
Not really.
So
But you know what?
Not since that comment, anyways. I'm teasing you.
Do you think these archetypes that go to like throughout art and history and literature where the dark-haired, with women in particular, the dark-haired woman, the brunette is always the evil one, and the blonde is
no,
always
that's
the good
that's
fairy.
definitely a white thing. But
A white thing.
yeah.
Okay.
That's
But I mean, that's
I think
that's like really, what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that's really deep-rooted
Well,
archetypes.
yeah.
You asked me a question, and more of that,
Yeah.
but I'm telling you, I think it's really about the social media and this generation. I mean, the fact that they would look at a hip hop diva, and because she's light skinned and she's got a big butt and she's got all this, same thing you said with black women, dark skinned black women, they just don't see her as being fine. Like, okay. And then you say, what about her attitude? You don't know this woman, then you say she's mean, she looks mean. Based on what? So for me, it's like, okay, I didn't know my job as a father, if you're thinking like this. I haven't done what's really hard there. I really haven't done my job as a father for you all to go around thinking, operating as if, there is this line of
Okay,
demarcation.
the things that go beyond that, you can't control. You cannot
Oh,
control
of
that.
course, I know that, but I'm disappointed that they
Yeah, we come to wrong
Of
people.
course,
My
of course.
father had the same issue with his kids, with
Yeah.
us kids.
Yeah.
Not along, it's
I know
different,
what you mean.
different issues,
Yeah.
but, when the kids grow up, they grow up to be their own people. And you're gonna think that way, like, oh, what did I do wrong as a parent? But you know what? It's not you. It is.
Well, no, I know that, but we're talking to the point though, that, so I think just in terms, in our own community, colorism is still an issue.
Yeah.
It's still comes back to haunt us on so many different levels.
Yeah, and the concept of safe and not safe and ambiguity is like, what did somebody say? Kind of like, we'll tiptoe into diversity. Like, we'll step our toe into diversity on TV or on a show or something, which is, slander in a lot of directions. Slander used in the slang way, not used in the proper way.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Who else has a representation issue? Yeah.
Oh, I kind of wanted to comment.
Yeah, please.
I don't feel like it's like a new thing. I just feel like
No, I don't think it's new either.
no, it's not new.
No,
I
It's
think
not, no.
I mean it's just you're perpetuating, just history. It's just with the onslaught of social media and just being so connected. There definitely is like an archetype for if she's gonna be if like a character is gonna. I've noticed a Black woman. It's usually racially ambiguous, usually lighter, certain texture, type of texture hair. I've also noticed in terms of Black families, I've always noticed that the woman is usually lighter than the male. Most of the time, it's very hard to find a situation or an example where the woman is darker in complexion than he is. So I feel like there's a lot of those things, and then you have, I don't know. I feel like that goes is really deep.
Yeah.
You can't really.
There's yes, I'm gonna chime in. I was watching Insecure show. I got HBO just to watch it.
Yeah.
There was a love scene, and it was between two people with dark skin, and I was like, I can't think of a dark skin love scene outside of How to Get Away with Murder. But I was like, that's not a thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these, I get kind of granular on this, and I don't get into like everything. There's so many things that annoy me about, Black women and stuff. But it's like, there's so many like wait a minute, like, that was,
Right.
you know what I mean? And so like, this is why I do this.
And
Like,
I feel
okay.
like until very recently, you never had like a Issa Rae be a main character, like
Even,
being dark skinned and
yes.
even having a dark skinned sidekick.
exactly,
Think back to like even like black shows like Martin, where I think that's the only example. Or like Living Single, where there was one
Yes,
character dark,
sure.
but they were always kind of like the butt of jokes, or
Yeah.
like they weren't really taken seriously.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah.
Yeah, another awesome thing about Insecure, I cannot emphasize enough to check out Insecure, is that the main character has natural hair, and she has a fantasy scene where she's imagining her life. And even in her fantasy scene, when she's thinking about a wedding, she has natural hair. That's a big deal because it's like, usually, like, you would think there'd be a wig, you would think there'd be straightening because it's a thing. Even in her wildest dreams, she has natural hair. It's small, but it's not. It's small, but it's not. Cool. What else? Who else has a blank watching? Something you and what you see on TV, that's your thing.
Every time I see a woman running, she always falls down.
Yes, the sprained ankles, the scary movie sprained
Is
ankles.
she in heels?
Everything.
It
Is she in
heals.
heels?
Oh yeah, most of the time.
Yeah, this,
So you don't think this has to do anything with just some evolution and just the fact that people are evolving and getting to that stage
break
where
it
they can, where you see Issa, wearing her natural now, and because they're now starting to take places in Hollywood where they didn't possess before, so now they have voice, a little more voice than they once had before. So now there can be a presentation of somebody with a natural, as you put it. So is that not just evolving? It's not.
To accomplish.
as opposed to, what would you?
As opposed to the past.
Yeah, so like,
Yeah.
going that, when you're looking at shows
Mhm.
and you're going, so she mentioned, what's his name, Martin's show, what was that? And how long ago was that show?
Mhm.
And so I think it's an evolution. So we realized that people were placed in those positions because at that point, that's what you took what you could get at that point, in the hopes that I could build off of that, in the hopes that the next person would be able to build off that. And again, Issa Rae did not come out without being able to build off of whatever the platforms of other people.
Past history. Do you think, in other words, do you think, are we getting better? Is it getting better over time? Like for the black families on TV, I never watched the Cosby Show. My sister was a big fan. I wasn't watching TV at that time in my life. But when you think back to the Cosby family, TV family, and Blackish, do you see a difference? Do people see a difference?
What do you mean see a difference?
I mean, just about what you're talking about,
The
the
content is
evolution,
different.
the evolution of time and
The
and
conversation on
stereotypes
both of
and-
them are different.
Yeah, because it's a different period, it's a different decade, or
Well, I-
because things have just progressed culturally.
Progressed, I think, because they progressed at the conversation now.
Well, they progress in the sense that behind the scenes, you now have executive producers, and you have directors who actually are people of color, who are actually running things, managing things, and owning things. So I think, so in terms of just that shift of power, you do see some shift of power, but realistically, there really isn't that much of a shift in power actually. You have a few shows that are run, executive produced by people of color, but very few actually financed by them. So you still have to get the financial backing to do these shows. So to answer your question, I do see an evolution, but
The financial backing that they end up receiving is because of the viewing.
well, yes, but my point to you is that the reason why you do see the change is because of the fact that the doors have been opened. Not as much as we like it to, but you are seeing people of color owning part of that business to make those kinds of decisions. So that's what I'm saying. So I do agree with you that there is evolution. but we're still a long way from that, even with the way the people of color view TV shows. So if you were to survey a sample size of people of color, you would probably still find a lot of things we're talking about in here. Why they prefer one character over the other, for the same reasons that we just talked about. I'm very sure about that.
Yeah, and when it comes down to Black women, like we are setting trends and we are supporting, we are ride or die for almost everyone. And like, one of my favorite examples, there's a show that was on called Sleepy Hollow. Anybody heard of it or seen it? It was a fun show. While it lasted, sorry, not sorry. So here's what happened. There was this wonderful actress named Nicole Bahari. Well, she's still around. And she was on it was on for 4 seasons, I think, and she was on for 3, or it was on for 3 and she was on for 2. But in any case, wonderful woman, Black chick, loved her, she was fun. And it was a reimagining of Ichabod Crane.
Yeah.
And it was a really fun show, and creative differences or whatever, euphemism they used, and she was gone. So were we. Bye-bye, Sleepy Hollow. It is no longer on the air. And it's like, and then they replaced it with a show called Pitch, also starring a Black chick. Pitch is not around because they didn't get what Black women like. They just wrote a show and put a Black woman in it and said, sorry, and it is gone. And it's like, we can tell what the writer's room looks like. You know what I mean? You can tell. And so somebody was asking me about, like, I make things. I've done some theater shows, I've produced some shows, and I do a podcast. And it was inspired by these talks. I wanted to talk about this more. And so what happened was somebody interviewed me and wanted to know, well, how can this change? What can happen? And I was like, well, I mean, this is kind of big. I don't know. Like, what am I going to do? I would have changed it if I knew. So I was like, well, there's 2 things that I think can help on a micro level, because that's all I know, is either tell your story or support someone who does, okay? And it's bigger than you get, than you know. You being here is helping me tell my story, okay? It's helping me to do my thing. And you telling your story could be starting a podcast. If you talk to me for more than 2 minutes, I will encourage you to start a podcast. It's a thing. Or, even if it's a podcast or a blog or poetry or spoken word or letters to the editor, we need those voices out there. Something small that sounds ridiculous is the concept of getting out of jury duty. That's how I see the arts. It's a joke about how people talk about how can I get out of jury duty and the crazy things that people have done and like, I hope I don't get picked and stuff. However, then there are talks about the criminal justice system. So it's like, well, so when you talk about the arts and when you talk about stuff, well, that stuff has to get made. So if you're not making it, think about supporting it, and that doesn't necessarily mean money. It can mean a signal boost. It can mean a word of encouragement. It could mean a subscribe. And it could mean a lot of things, and it makes a world of difference. Issa Rae started with a web series. I mean, I'm sure she started, in school and all sorts of stuff. But it started with Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. And if you look at the early stuff, like the camera stuff, it looked kind of rough. And then you look at some of the later episodes, crystal clear, because she did a crowdfunding campaign, and then Pharrell got involved, and it is crisp. I mean, equally funny, but like she got support. And like, I was mad when they ran out of stuff for me to buy online. I was like, let me take my money. You know know what I mean? It wasn't, it was a t-shirt, it wasn't like $1 trillion. But, it was like, do what you can when you can, volunteer when you can do a thing, go to shows, do what you can, it makes a difference. Watch TV shows, if TV shows aren't your thing, whatever. So anyhow, tell your story, support other people's stories, it makes a difference. So, yeah, that's my thing. Thank you so much for coming. 8, but I got nowhere to be. Oh, and
How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this talk for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. But Wonderful Malcontents is my other podcast and talk and stuff. And such a year. It started because a malcontent is a dissatisfied rebel, and Wonderful is being inspired and marvelous, and I kept finding these women that I used to work with, and they would see me later after I would teach them like body image classes, and they're like, it was a game changer, but it's like, I want to tell my story and do my thing, but I don't have a place to do it. So I started a new podcast, and it's to encourage women, and I focus on Black women, but anyone can listen, and it's inspiring, and it's about being dissatisfied and doing something about it and telling your story and getting out there. So Dissatisfied Rebels, Wonderful Malcontents. So yeah, I'll be around.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You guys are great. Thank you so much for coming.